being very quiet.
Thank you, boys. Yes, I know I'm trying. It's just that whenever I hear these arguments and I hear 2 or 3 sentences strung together, I already have 15 sentences up talking about everything that was wrong about the initial statement. I mean, yes, I assume that reality exists, and the reason that I do, as I explained to Eric Hovind in D.C., is because it's a philosophical argument, which I'm personally not interested in, but regardless of my subjective interest, if reality exists or not is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change the conclusion, because the rules of this imposed video game still apply to me. So reality is real from my perspective, even if reality itself is not real. So I don't have a choice but to make the assumption that reality exists. I still have to function within it. Now, there are so many points, and I hope you guys can be patient with me and allow my temporary handicap while I get through these. The fact that I do assume reality exists, which is why I can't assume anything that Eric Hovind assumes. Because if physical science evidence can be dismissed as irrelevant the way that Eric does, then literally reality has no meaning. Those who are genuinely curious about the world, by the way, would not post a statement of faith declaring their position to be infallible and denying that they will even consider the point that they might be wrong, which is as opposite of science as it can possibly be. This weekend, I argued with a great many Christians in public square over this very point, wherein they refused to believe that creationist organizations would be dishonest enough to post their confirmation bias and state that they would, in advance, automatically reject and without consideration any evidence that might stand against their predetermined conclusions. Now, time and time again, I post these things where they do actually admit that they refuse to consider any potential error, where they assume infallibility, and they will not consider evidence and will actively ignore evidence. And that's why I would like to add the statement of faith that was read earlier in this show, so that I can add that to my list of public declarations where these creationist organizations proudly admit this, as if this kind of a bias could be something to be proud of. Again, while you say that you're automatically assuming you're a Christian God because there was a passage in your relatively recent Bible that says that God created, if you go back many centuries earlier, you've got the Bhagavad Gita.
One second, Aaron. I think we've
was
stopped,
the one that created.
We've stopped being broadcast on blog. Have we? I'm getting nothing coming through on blog. Have we stopped being broadcast?
No.
I'm terribly sorry, we're still here. For some reason, it stopped coming through.
Yeah,
Aaron, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Do carry on. And then we'll come to Eric.
All right, T-Jarm 67 is next to me, and he's got the blog up here, and it appears to be working fine. Also, the fact that I do not have a circular argument, it's rather similar to the argument that was made before about 2 + 2 = 5. I have consistencies, and one of the things that confirms that is the fact that I do not have faith. This is how I can make sure of things for absolutely sure. Now, there are ways of testing my conclusions. There's ways of testing my assumptions. And first of all, I have to question my assumptions. All of the creationist arguments, all of them, amount to a logical fallacy of a circular argument routing back to the assumed conclusion. And I have so many notes in front of me because, like I said, you don't have to talk for more than a minute before I have 30 minutes worth of refutation because of all the initial assumptions. I can't list how many things are wrong with that. Kent Hovind, I once read a sentence in his where I managed to find as many errors as there were words in the sentence for all the implications. For example, Eric interviewed me among all of these other atheists, and he announced that all of the atheists that he had interviewed had conceded the possibility that God exists. 2 problems with that. One, I was one of those atheists. I stated in the square on that day in another public argument that because God is defined by the miracles, and the miracles are defined as acts of magic which defy the laws of physics and are therefore physically impossible, then God, by extension, is impossible by definition. And without physical evidence, which Eric says he can ignore, he doesn't need science to back him up, so he says. Without that physical evidence, then you have not shown that the things that you assume even are possible. I did not concede any possibility that your God exists, because such has never been demonstrated. All I've ever gotten are logical fallacies, and this conversation constitutes that. I suggest you amend that. I did not make that concession.
Eric.
I'm done for the moment.
Eric, we'll let you respond to that.
Okay, yeah, everybody that I talked to, when I asked them, and I don't believe I asked you that, Aaron, if you believe that, is it impossible for God to exist? And of course, if I did ask you that and said, Aaron, is it impossible for God to exist? And you were to say, absolutely yes, well, then I'm going to ask how you know that to be absolutely true, because the atheists pride themselves in saying you cannot prove a universal negative. You know, you just simply can't do that. So,
and if you've ever seen any of my conversations, you'll know that I never use the term you just said we always use. I always argue to the opposite of everything you just said that I would argue for.
Do you accept that there are absolutes? Do you accept that there is such a thing as absolute truth?
No. And all
well,
of my public speeches say so.
In your rant just a few seconds ago, you talked about you're absolutely sure of this and you're absolutely sure of that, and so you're contradicting what you said literally 2 minutes ago.
I'm not contradicting anything because I explain it every time. Truth implies more than just fact. Now, this weekend, for example, I had to explain this for the 1,000th time to somebody who did the exact stupid word game that you just gave me. If you can be absolutely sure of something because you can test it, well, are you absolutely sure there's no absolute truth? Well, no, truth means more than just fact, but I got him to define it. And so it really simplified. It turned out that I was thinking on super levels beyond what he was. He was saying truth in no more than whether a statement is true or false, and that's it. Well, then it doesn't make any difference. It's either true or it's false, or it's degrees therein. Most things are going to be degrees with it therein, but you can have a statement that is simply true and a statement that is simply false. That doesn't mean simply true does not mean the same thing as absolute truth. Absolute truth
true or it's not, Aaron, and that's where the problem.
Maybe I can help this
out.
Just,
right.
Maybe I can help
you
this
and
out.
I are using a different definition. When I say,
what is your
definition? One at a time, please.
What is your definition of truth?
Let me explain. I'm trying to get that.
Okay, I'd love to hear that.
You say, or at least I know, when you say, or when this other boy on the street that was arguing with me this weekend say, and so many other people say absolute truth, it turns out I was surprised to find that all their meaning is simply true or simply false. No, that's not the definition I'm using. Otherwise, I would say simply true or simply false. Absolute truth means you have a complete knowledge, a infallible knowledge. There's nothing more you can learn. This is beyond the concept of humanity. We would have to be gods to conceive of absolute truth. Yes, there is one reality. We are all in error with regard to that reality, and we have to find the degree of error that we face. Absolute truth is beyond human capacity. To talk in absolute truth is to say that you deny the possibility that you can be wrong or that there is anything else you can learn. If you're talking about simply true or simply false, yes, there is simply true and simply false, and I do not contradict myself by using a higher definition where true is different than truth and simple is different than absolute.
Okay, do you mind if we get in here for a minute? Because he's been ranting for quite a while now, because what he's failed to do in that whole time is define truth for us. Aaron, what is truth?
Truth, as I said, has an implication in wisdom. But if we're not going to use that, fine, then there's no distinction between the word truth and the word true.
Okay, what is truth according to your worldview?
It's not according to my worldview.
Okay, what is truth?
My worldview is irrelevant.
What is
I
truth?
use the same language that I would use the same language as I think everybody else does. While a statement that is true is
Well, what is
truthful,
truth is the question.
I know that, and I'm trying to explain the answer since you obviously don't get it. It has an implication of wisdom that is beyond just the true of it. It's beyond just whether it's a true statement. Yes, it is a truth. If you make a true statement, you are speaking the truth. But truth, calling something truth when you're only talking about matters of mere fact, implies a philosophical position of wisdom, which is inapplicable when we're only talking about data. If, in fact, you are only talking about data, then you are just making the distinction about whether your statement is truth or false. And if it's a true or false question, then why are you saying absolute? Because it doesn't make any sense.
Aaron,
You're
can you please just answer
confusing-
the question? What is truth according to your world? We're not asking what it's beyond. We're asking what is truth. Now, I can help you out there. The common definition among unbelievers is truth is that which corresponds to reality. Do you want to assume that definition? If not, what is your definition of truth?
I would be happy to assume the definition that you just provided. That's
truth is that which
perfectly
corresponds
fine.
to reality.
In
Okay,
which
now
case-
let me finish. Now, the thing is, you said that you could be wrong about everything you claim to know. Is that a fair statement?
I would say that we are all wrong to some
Well,
degree
I'm not asking about all
everything.
of us. I'm
And
asking.
It's,
Can you be wrong about?
it's a
Hold
scope
on.
Hang on.
of relevance question.
Let me ask Aaron. Can you be wrong
the
about
thing
everything
that-
you claim to know?
No, I said we are wrong, all of us, to a degree.
Well, I'm not asking you
That's
how
why
you know what other
absol-
people know. What do you know for certain, and how do you know it though?
I'm not answering that question. I'm not assuming that you're asking that question. I'm answering the question you actually did ask.
Okay, go ahead.
All of us are subject to a degree of error. Everybody has a metric of accuracy, and we are trying to improve that accuracy. When you assume absolute truth, then you're refusing to acknowledge that there
You
is
see, that's
a
not my
degree of
question.
accuracy.
That's not my question, and that's what happens in these
Okay,
types
well,
of conversations. All I want to know is if you could be wrong about everything you claim to know, and you're talking about what truth is and stuff like that. Could you be wrong about everything you claim to know?
No.
No. Okay.
No,
So
I cannot.
now you say truth is that which corresponds to reality. How do you know that your view of reality is the right view?
Because it's testable.
It's testable. Okay, but don't you have to have truth in order to assume, to do tests?
Define truth again. Are we
Truth-
still
truth
using
is the-
definition of truth? If we're still using the same definition of truth, corresponds with reality, yes, I have things that correspond with reality. You have things that do not. Therefore, while we are both wrong, I admit that I am wrong, and I am demonstrably more accurate than you are. While you refuse to admit that you are wrong, but you are demonstrably wrong.
Can you tell me how you
And the
know that
fact
you're
that you
living?
refuse to admit that
Can you tell me how you know that you're living in the right reality? Can you tell me how you
Doesn't
know that
matter,
this is right?
because-
It matters. If your definition of truth is that which corresponds to reality, then of course it matters.
then whatever reality we live in, whether it is real or not, yes, I'm still concordant with that. It is still applicable. It is still concordant with reality, where your belief system is not.
Well, the thing is, what you're saying is that you're not certain that your reality is the right reality. So then you can't have truth, and that's the point.
I am saying the opposite of that. My position is concordant with reality, where yours is not. Mine is
No.
testable and demonstrable to be concordant with reality, where yours is, by admission, not.
You are the one that said that you start with an
One
assumption.
second, Si,
Okay,
because
go on, sorry.
I know that a lot of people are trying to have their say, and I did explain that I'll try and let everyone have their say. Concordance is desperately wanting to make a point. We'll take concordance, and then shortly we'll take our first caller. Sorry, I apologise to everyone. I know all of you have got a lot that you want to say.
Just one last thing. When Eric Hovind wrote that all of the atheists he interviewed admitted the possibility that God exists, and then he said that he didn't ask me that question, then why did he say that all the atheists he talked to admitted that possibility?
All right, we'll come back to Eric in a
all of
second.
them except
Okay, let's go to concordance, and then we'll come back to you
All right,
in a
there,
moment,
boys.
Eric.
I think what's being hidden here, and I don't know if it's intentional or not, is the reason why Eric and Cy think that they can break out of the basal assumption problem is that they believe that God reveals truth to them supernaturally. So the basis of their claims to no basal assumptions is that they believe in a divine revelation. And Cy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but let's test one or two of those basal assumptions for whether or not they're true absolutes in your model. So Cy, if you could give me a law of logic, maybe two or three. What are
law of non-contradiction? But the thing is, like what we're doing now, and this is the kind of trick that atheists have been doing with unbelievers with Christians for the longest time. First of all, they trick them into that the fact that they don't know that God exists and get them to try and prove it with evidence. And now you're trying to trick me into a logical conversation when I say that you can't account for logic, because in your video you posted 3 or 4 different realities. And you said that there's a problem with basal assumptions. You just said that now. So before we get into a conversation about logic and about stuff like that, how do you, concordance, know that you're in the right reality?
Well, no. More importantly, how do you know that your logic is reliable if it's dependent upon, if it's contingent upon the existence of a supernatural being making it valid? Then how do you know that 2 + 2 = 4 is truly equal to 4, or simply because God has decided today that 2 + 2 = 4? So how do you know that your reality is the correct reality without revelation?
I have to jump in again.
Aaron?
I have to jump in again because, again, again, he is saying that it matters which reality you're in. It doesn't. It doesn't matter if reality
is that true,
is
Aaron,
really
that it doesn't matter? Is it true that it doesn't matter?
Yes.
Okay,
because the rules still apply to us in every case.
According to, how do you know that?
Because the rules still apply to us in every case.
Okay, now let me ask you this.
It's irrelevant because from our
Aaron, you're reasoning with me now. Aaron, you're reasoning with me now. Aaron, you're reasoning with me now. How do you know that your reasoning is valid?
Because it's concordant with reality, regardless whether reality is real.
Are you using your reasoning in order to see if it's concordant with reality?
Yes.
Okay, is that not a vicious circle to use your reasoning to justify your reasoning?
No.
Okay, thanks for your time.
No.
You have another question?
Cy, no, you can't do that. No, Aaron, please let me finish, okay?
Yes.
Aaron, let concordance finish, please.
All right, Cy, you say that you don't need your reason to validate your reason. So I want to give you a very simple challenge. Okay. Oh, so you do use your reason, or was this a contradictory statement?
Not autonomously. That's the difference. You say your reasoning is valid because your reasoning is valid. How do you know your reasoning is valid, concordance?
So how do you know your reasoning is valid? I think that's a
revelation from God.
Aha, so magic. You believe
No. I'm
Aaron, please, one at a time. Let's keep it civil. Aaron, please.
Concordance,
bear in mind, George Harrison had a personal relationship with Krishna. It's easy to have personal relationships with gods that may be completely imaginary. When you assume that God reveals something, that's the way you're doing a confirmation bias, that prayer is answered no matter what the prayer is, and it's always going to be the God you assume because you assume it to begin with. That's your circular reasoning. That's refusal to reason the position. We are reasoning because we assume that we may be wrong to any degree, and we have to test for that. We have to improve that.
You can be wrong about that. But you could be wrong about that.
I can't. You are wrong. We are both wrong to a degree, not absolutely.
Right. Okay. But you can be wrong. But you could be wrong about that.
So let's cut Aaron out of this conversation for a moment. Please, Aaron, please let us finish this point.
Aaron, let concordance go, please.
You're like a nuclear option here. Cy, what you're saying is that you can rely on your reason to validate your reason because a God exists, but you have not made. Okay, so God's logic. And so what we're dealing with here is that God is validating your logic, and that's how you can validate that God is validating your logic. And so you've fallen into the same basal assumption circularity. You have no way out of that.
Well, let me ask you this question then. Would it be impossible for God to reveal something such that we can be certain of them? Would that be impossible?
I think I can take it from.
Well, no, I want to ask. Let me ask concordance. Would it be impossible for God to do that?
If God is a let's see, if God is contingent on being logically
No,
coherent.
no, I'm saying he's all-knowing, he's all-powerful, and logic is it logic?
Aaron, please. Aaron, please.
Logic is
Please.
oh man.
Inside.
Okay. Well, this is not.
Aaron,
State.
Can't you just mute him?
Yeah, Aaron, you're getting a bit disruptive here.
Aaron, please stop.
I'm demonstrated that it is a fact. So you can't tell me what God is until you can show me what God is.
Aaron, please.
Just step away from the mic, Aaron. All right, Sai.
Mhm.
If God is contingent on being logically coherent, or is logic dependent on God, and therefore God does not have to be logically coherent?
No, God has to be
Which
logical.
of those two options? Those
Neither.
are the
Hang on a
statement
second.
and the negation.
Hang on a second. That's you through Flo's dilemma that they used to apply to morality are now applying to logic. Neither is the case. God is logical. Logic is derived from God. It's not because he is contingent.
No, you've said the statement. Now that means that logic is contingent upon God.
No.
Yes?
I'm saying that well, logic is a characteristic of God.
Then it is contingent upon God. In the subject-object characteristics, you're saying that logic is a property that derives from the existence of God,
Right,
because you're saying
that's
without
right.
God there would be no logic.
Right.
Okay, that means God does not necessarily have to be logical. Do you
No, he
understand?
does. He does.
No.
Okay, now let me ask you this question.
That means that you cannot reason about a logically
No, hang on a second. You posted a video with 4 different views of reality. How do you know that the view of reality that isn't the right one
I think that's
is
dodging the question.
Yeah.
No.
Sorry,
We're gonna get back to
Just
we're gonna
answer
get
the
back-
question.
Everyone,
Just answer the
Doesn't
question.
matter.
Everyone
It doesn't
stop.
matter which reality it is. It
Aaron,
doesn't
please
matter if
stop.
reality is real.
Right. I've told you before the show started. No talking over each other and no interrupting. Right. Otherwise, no one's going to get anywhere. So the point I'm going to be, and I'm going to take the first caller very soon. So the what seems to be the position is you keep on throwing out, the question, how do you know that your reason is correct? But what you don't seem to have done, save for the rather bland response to the question when it's put to you, well, it's been revealed to be by God. What you don't seem to have done is to explain why it is that you can be certain that you are not being deceived or in a matrix or whatever. And just simply stating, well, it's been revealed to me,
Right.
is, I think, unpersuasive for me.
Well, the thing is, it's not persuasion that we're going for. It's proof. Proof does not equal persuasion. You would have to be intellectually dishonest to say that it's
Right.
impossible. Let me finish. You'd have to be intellectually dishonest to say that it's impossible for God to exist, because you'd have to be God to make that claim. You'd have to know everything. You'd have to know which reality is the right reality. And Concord's made a video saying that you can't know which reality is the right reality. So that being the case, he can't say that it's impossible for God to exist. My worldview is that an all-knowing, all-powerful being exists who has revealed things to us such that we can know them for certain. And if you want to deny that, that's fine, but I want to know how you know for certain that that's not the case.
Right, I'm going to pause this because we're going around. No, Aaron, stop. I'm going to pause it with the first caller who's been waiting patiently. Welcome to the show, Alex.